Hi, this is Lily Cotilla. Welcome to Edging Life. This is a spiritual part of my practice and views on life. And I incorporate these spiritual beliefs into just my regular life because it is my way of being, so I don't dedicate a particular half hour or hour to exclusively have a spiritual practice. I just live it, and it becomes infused with my words. In any case, this particular topic of spirituality has to do with birth and children. When a child is growing in utero, a mother and that baby, that fetus, share a body. And on the other side of this body, in the all souls place, perhaps we're all connected in love and knowing that is beyond the containment of human form. We're just all there, sharing and knowing, and no words need to be spoken, and no misunderstandings happen because we are all in that true knowing space. Now then, when we come into this earth body, these individual selves, there are things that we have access to that we don't have access to on the all souls side of life. We have feelings and sensations of body. There's individual aspects of ego and learning and interests beyond the collective whole. The Hindus call this space Brahman, and the individual ego is Atman. They describe it like a raindrop falling into a water of the whole sea, the whole ocean. Pluses and minuses to both sides. We just don't think of the death side or all souls side of life as having so many amazing, beautiful positives. And when we're in the all soul space, wanting to come into human body because there are so many amazing, beautiful positives, because we can't fundamentally believe that as humans. If we did, it would change the constructs of everything in this world, because everything in our world is based on life and death. And ultimately, when it comes down to the root of everything. So, in any case, what I was actually going to talk more specifically about, I just had to give that backdrop in order to get to what I wanted to share, has to do with the individual ego. So mother and a baby share the body. They're one. Mother, of course, is familiar with ego of self on this side of life. Baby yet is not. It's almost like a transitional body, a bringing an entryway, a portal, if you will, from that side into this side of being. And when that baby is born, it's almost like he or she is a starfish, in that the water runs right through that starfish, or an invertebrate, if you will, and allows for breathing and passing of nutrients. But after the baby is born, I mean this in the sense of the emotional self and the mental self of that baby. It's still like there's no definition yet of self. There's an understanding of the self body as it is birthed from mother, and as age happens, there's an awareness of the self body, the lines of containment of skin between inner and outer world. But there's not necessarily yet a differentiation between the self of ego and the self of others. When this happens for children, in my opinion, is really dependent on the individual child. But for much of the time, there's a sense of oneness of everyone surrounding that child. And there will come a point in time where he or she will recognize that he has his individual views and his individual feelings, and it's not just a mirroring of other. Now, this stated, that child becomes imprinted with mirroring of other and mirroring of other and mirroring of other and mirroring of other. So many reflections of other selves out there in the world. And then as that individual grows, that person gets to synthesize all these mirroring selves of other that have been imprinted onto that ego psyche and penetrate the world and be who he or she wants to be based on all the reflections of these other selves. Which brings an interesting angle in that how does one perhaps shift a crack of an opening as to allow more of the all souls truth to filter through this being, this form. But my point is that the ego self of the child, when he or she is in the heart space of that self, can be very sensitive and very feeling. And sometimes it can be too much for that individual child to feel all that is transpiring if the ego self, the heart, has been hurt. And so when this happens, if you are a parent and you know you have a sensitive child, be aware of how much emotional flooding that child can have once he or she has the awareness of self. Because if it is too much for the little psyche to take, it will affect his memory or her memory, because the brain, the neurological system, will shift into a different part of that brain that's more easily handleable by that little developing ego self. So if there's an intense sadness of the heart and it's too much to take, almost like a switch will happen, and happiness or another part of the brain takes over that can manage that ego hurt, that heart pain. And if you're a parent who has a sensitive child, you can have an awareness that this might be happening, because there can be some gaps in memory and some difficult, memory gaps are completely normal for us human beings. We don't remember everything all the time, every second of the day. But this is a little different. If the heart gets too intense to handle and the flooding happens, a part of the brain that's more able to manage life will take over for a while, such that that flooding doesn't drown that little ego psyche. And so just keep this in mind, and some tools that you can use to help your child and you, if the individual isn't remembering various things surrounding that time and space in which the heart hurt happened. Try not to get frustrated and mad or blaming or accusatory that something's wrong. Just try and be loving and reassure that child that, memory gaps sometimes happen, and you might bring that child who's in the space of the happy, more protection part of the brain. Just let that individual know what you heard him say, or, when he had access to the sad part of the self. And keep this running dialogue so that these different parts of self don't become so differentiated over the years that the walls are so high with no windows in them that they're really different parts of personality, and nothing wrong with that except for the fact that the memory walls create some difficulties in life. So if you can help some windows remain in between these aspects, or among these aspects of the brain of this developing psyche who's close to the all souls place and has a huge feeling capacity and heart, if you can help the flow of life and transitions and the tools to deal with more intense emotions, you will really be giving that being a gift in this life, in that there's more of a working sense of self. And life is hard enough, with many aspects and people and differences and communication. And so if this child can have the tools as much as possible to have the windows of self internally open, and your loving and presence is there, what a great gift. Okay, wow, that's a long YouTube. Edging Life. Thanks.